Let's get started. So nice to see you all and to be able to speak with you in this way. And really wonderful day today to get together. Actually, I'm really excited because I really want to speak about something in particular that's been on my mind for a while, and it has to do with DNA. It's been coming up a lot, right? So when I do all these sessions, I get to see a sampling of what's going on for people. And the latest has been lineage clearing. That's not a new thing, but I wanted to talk about DNA a little bit and how souls work. How does it work that you're a soul? How can a soul have such a diverse history and then end up in these interesting bodies, and why? So, yeah, definitely having some weird DNA. In fact, it was pretty funny because here I was thinking about talking about DNA, and my father ended up texting my group family text, which has like a million people on it. And he says that we're 40% Basque. And I'm like, what? Here, we grew up believing we were like 100% Scottish, right? And no, I'm not really. I have a smattering of Scottish, yes, but I'm actually more Basque and Icelandic. I don't look Icelandic, but that was interesting. And both of those countries have very unique languages, the Basque language being so unique that no one knows where it's from. So, Anyhow, this leads us to looking at these amazing bodies and what is this going on with the DNA? What's upgrading right now? We just had a crazy solar flare and everyone went nuts for a few days, including me. I was just waiting for some crazy wild thing to happen. And of course it did, like 10 of them. So anyhow, with that, DNA is like having inherited a house. And when you have this house, you get in as a soul, and it's so full of stuff. It's so full of stuff. It's all this trauma. It's great, great, great granddad's trauma over there, and triple great grandma's of stuff over there. And then you're so busy in this density in these bodies currently when we incarnate in them that you don't even remember who you really are most of the time. And this is that really tricky field of limitation around remembrance. You might recall that I speak about 5 fields of limitation that are programmed into human existence. And one of them is actually the fact that we feel like we're made to forget. Part of that's mainly because of all that trauma and density that's stuck in our DNA, layers and layers of it that come from our ancestors. Now, this, of course, has a scientific basis. There's been all kinds of interesting studies done on DNA, of which we know very little. And one of the things that they learned is that one single strand of DNA holds more memory on it than all of the computers on the planet combined, which is really hard to wrap our minds around. But the second thing they learned is that there's so much information written on there that they were able to trace back specific trauma to the DNA 14 generations back. That's as far as they were able to get with the current technology. 14 generations. That's an incredible amount of trauma. Many thousands of people at that point having had an influence upon your existence now. And this also was interesting to me because with that, much of our ancestry went through all this really dark time on the planet. And I wanted to mention, for example, the Irish history. Since today is St. Patrick's Day, I'd like to point out that many of us who have pale skin in America come with a little smattering of Irish history. And this Irish history is very important because most of the people who have any of that particular strands of DNA are going to have some repercussions regarding the things that have occurred to them and their ancestors. For example, the English, Irish, Scottish ancestry all went through incredible amounts of siege warfare. Siege warfare basically means that you go and you show up and have your army and you chase everybody into their castle, which is the whole reason why castles were built, was to protect the local town. And you'd sit there and wait. And you'd wait for people to starve to death. And then finally, maybe, surrender. So anyone who has any Irish ancestry, for example, will be affected by the fact that one of their ancestors probably watched many of their own family members starve to death. And they themselves barely got out alive. And that's the kind of stuff that we have in our DNA. And it causes genetic mutations. So with that particular issue, for example, we have a lot of work to do. Many of us come from this interesting rule that I've kind of seen show up, and I'm not the only one who's seen this. A lot of other seers I know have mentioned this too, that every 7 generations there's someone who comes in to heal their family lineage, where they feel really called to it. They're awake enough to actually work on healing their lineage. And guess what? I think that's all of us here. So that's really important. That's all of us here trying to, of course, heal our family lineage. So those of you who have been just coming in, I wanted to say to you that we're talking about DNA and DNA trauma and how our lineages are very important to that DNA trauma. So with all of this inherited junk in our DNA, in our houses, in our bodies, we really need to be able to clear it. So how do we do that? Well, I've been testing out some ways, and I'd like to offer you a particular skill, a technique for all of you to try. And this can help you do many things. Once you start cleaning up your lineage, then you're going to find that certain things begin to come online, like soul memory. We'd really enjoy, of course, being able to have access to all of those lives we've had and all the wisdom that came through from those lives. And we do, we have access to them. But, of course, I think that coming in, someone's mentioning here that there's a program about forgetting everything for us to come and then remember as one of our goals. Well, yeah, now it is. I think it didn't originally start that way. I think that the program around us forgetting and not being able to continue to move forward until we begin to start to heal all of our trauma and our ancestors' trauma and our DNA, that this is going to make a really big difference for us. But that's not how the original experiment started out. The original experiment started out with full remembrance. And so I think that that's really important. Nikki's pointing out, saying, stop the madness with this life related to the addiction and the rage. Yes, exactly. Many of us, that 7th generation, who are come here to help heal our lineage, that we really are here to stop that madness. Finally, once and for all, that we get to do that. So I want to share with you this technique. It's very powerful, and I'll do it with you, sort of walk you along into it. So first, you got to prepare a little bit, obviously. Get down to the nitty-gritty and ask yourself, if you're going to move any sort of physical, emotional, mental stuff out of the way, any spiritual stuff out of the way that you might have inherited, then you're going to want a clean, clear list of what those things are. It doesn't matter if there's 20 things. Go for it. Name all the things that you want to shift out of your embodiment, out of your DNA memory. Get down and list it out. Be as detailed as possible. Go grab your thesaurus. If there's a lot of things that we need to be able to move, then that's absolutely okay. And that's where you got to start. Come up with your list. Think about all the problems that the people in your family might have, including health issues, because those obviously came from a lot of trauma causing genetic mutations over many different generations. So with that, then you're going to come up with 20 things to replace those things. So you remember, my way of doing clearing is a little different. If we're going to move something out of the way, then we have to replace it because of physics. We don't want to leave that gap, right? And so just to answer Krista here, or no, it's Sarah. Sarah says, it's not always constructive to remember if past lives were full of pain and fear. Absolutely. And she's pointing out the white guilt, seeing only white culture as colonizers or distortions in cultural perceptions. Absolutely. But here's the thing. With full memory, yes, there's incredible pain. Hey, trust me, some of my lives have been so intensely painful and horrible, or that I was the perpetrator, that I was the terror and the tyrant. Wow. Actually, that's true. It can be really painful to examine that. And since we're working on moving density out and bringing in more light, we'd like to mainly be focusing in on what's going to be most useful, right? So you know what? We're given that opportunity to be able to say, I need to know what's most useful for me right now. Because we have all of that available. Even if you can't remember, your soul is still very smart and it has an incredible body of wisdom to draw from. And so remembrance, full-blown seeing and feeling and smelling and that kind of remembrance isn't necessary all the time. But certainly we can get what we need. That's as far as we need to take it, really. And if you want full remembrance, then, and you're willing to look at the painful stuff, that you're going to be okay and not be traumatized again by it, then you can. But that's the thing. You're the soul in charge. You're the commander. You get to decide, what do I want to remember? Maybe nothing. And that's okay too. In the meantime, let's go ahead and we're going to take a look and really look at that list of traumas that we want to shift, and then we want to have a comparative list of opposite things we're going to replace it with. Again, if there's a lot of things on your list, which most people will have probably 10 or 20, and yes, someone mentioned if you're adopted and you have no idea what your family trauma might be, that's okay. Start with the family you've got. Start with your own issues that are really apparent to you, and just assume that certainly many of those things might be coming through from your lineage. And truly, people can often find that. Recently, I was teaching someone this technique, and her stepfather's family ended up standing behind her too. And she asked, is that okay? Should I just do my father's family and my biological father's family, who wasn't really my dad, really, and my mom? And I said, yes, whoever comes, bless them with your focus, bless them with your attention. If you end up with, 5 different lineages behind you, no problem. Because guess what? You can jam pack any amount of people in your field with this next step. So you've got your 20 things you want to get rid of, 20 things you want to replace it with. Get out your thesaurus, get creative. Qualities of light. And then you're going to blow your heart field up. How do you do that? You just got to ask. So we'd say, dear heart, please blow my field up as large as it needs to go in order to invite both my mother and father line and any other lineages that need to be healed now. And then we take a deep breath. And then we'll ask, Dear father and mother line and any other lineages that are come to receive healing, I invite you to stand behind me in 2 spirals or however many spirals are needed. So spirals can jam-pack a lot more people and souls into a smaller, more quantum way. So we're going to use spirals. That way it's not going to be a straight line and you can hold a lot more folks. So with that, then you're going to start to look at your list. So you'll say, and this is the difference between a normal heart command and of course a normal heart command and a command that, sorry, my screen's acting funny. Okay. Normal heart command and a command where you're helping to clean up your lineage. You'll say, dear heart, please lift, and then list your 20 things out, up, down, or out of my whole body and field and the bodies and fields of all my lineages now. And then we'll take a big deep breath. And then you come in and you say, dear heart, please fill my whole body and field and the bodies and fields of all of my lineage with, and then you'll list your set of opposing energies. And then you'll say, now, and another deep breath. It takes like 5 minutes to do this, and do it often. Here's why. The more you do this, you're going to be lifting more stuff out of your house than if you only focused on yourself. If you're giving this gift of healing to the full lineage and all of the lineages that need help from you, then you're going to find that your DNA gets clearer faster than if you worked on just your own body every day. Now, if this is the case, then you're also going to be helping a lot of people because they didn't go anywhere. That's just because linear time makes it look like they went somewhere. They didn't go anywhere. And they need you. And in fact, what I've been finding is that if people are doing this, they end up having little events and coincidences and dreams and visions that come from their ancestors. And their ancestors, they come in and they say, hey, guess what? I really need you to look at like resentment. Would you please look at resentment? Hey, I really need you to look at heart issues. Could you please look at heart issues? Could you look at my, at great-great-grandpa's life and see how angry he was? Would you help? Would you help with that? This is happening to many people that I've been teaching this particular technique to, and I love it. I love that the ancestors are willing to ask for help, and they'll do it in their own way. And it can be really beautiful because then you finally have an opportunity to direct heal some of the people and the souls that really need it most. So I think that's really beautiful. I wanted to share this with you as a technique, just a nice little modification of our usual heart commands. And I hope that'll be useful to you. There are some other questions that have been coming up that I'd like to address. And so we've been covering a little bit around the DNA and lineage and how the body works. And the body, as we've just been discussing, has its own history and all that's written on the DNA. But what about that soul history? All these different things we've been, all these different beings. What about access to that? And not just beings in bodies that look like ours. People can be all kinds of things. In my lifetimes, I've mainly stuck to this galaxy. But why? Why this galaxy? Whereas some of the people I know, they've been in lots of different galaxies. But not me. How come? I was wondering that too. And I think it's very special because each of us are a ray of light, like a strand of luminosity from source. And all of these different experiences, all these different experiences as a soul, they can, of course, have an end game. They have a goal. I know what my goal is, and I've had it since I was born, since I can remember. And this is the same goal in every incarnation that I've had. And so for those of you who've just joined us, we've been speaking about cleaning up our lineage, cleaning up our DNA, and now we're talking about why do souls incarnate the way they do? I think this is important to understand because all of us have, of course, chose to be humans at this point, and we're meeting here together for a reason. None of that is a coincidence. There's incredible power in that. And the fact that us as immortal souls who have, many of us, skipped around many different galaxies, even being stars and planets, seriously, very interesting lifetimes that we get access to. Yet others, like myself, I haven't left this galaxy. And it's because each of us are like a playing piece. We are strands. We are strands of luminosity coming from Source, trying to learn about itself. So you might recall that I point out often that the whole purpose of this universe is the same. And that purpose is that we are here to continue to answer the question, what is love? This whole universe has to do with discovering what is love. So you as a soul have co-created this experience to continue to feed back that experience to Source. It's sort of like Source says, okay, I'm going to make a replica of my consciousness, or a fraction or a facet of my consciousness, so that I can continue to learn about myself and answer this great grand question that I have. That's why we will often continue to have experiences that are going to feed back into Source that way. So I can use my example. I think in this case, I haven't left this galaxy. I just love this galaxy so much. And I love the experiments that have happened in this galaxy. In fact, I've really been interested in that since the beginning. I have a passion for it. I have a passion for change. I have a passion for the grand big picture. And I can't stop that. It's part of my essence. It's part of my strand of luminosity. And there are others like me. And for me, this game that I'm playing, this portion of the game, is here to discover love from my perspective. And it's the same for you. But to learn about those past lives, a lot of times we have to work on cleaning up that lineage, cleaning up the DNA. We're moving density out of the way so we can have access to more light. That's simply what it's all about. And so someone asked me too about angels. Can people incarnate as an angel and then become a human? Here's what I've seen, and it's my opinion. Angels are a one-off. Each angel is like a different species of its own. In fact, there's a lot of ancient text that talks about each angel is its own species, which I think is very interesting. When I've asked angels, how did you come into existence? I'd say, were you born? And then they couldn't answer me. So I'd say, well, how did you come into existence? And they'd say, well, we were ignited. And they get a chance to live incredibly long lives, many bazillions of years. And sometimes they're even as old as this universe. But they are a singular strand from Source that has chose to, or at least Source has picked that strand to only become an angel. And if they die, they go straight back to Source and they stay there. That's why most people, and in general, from what I've seen, we don't have angelic incarnations. Angelic incarnations are a singular experience and incredibly long. Whereas these bodies are super short, aren't they? I mean, parrots live longer than humans. Turtles live longer than humans. So we don't get very long experience in these bodies. They're very organic, they're very delicate, but the angelic embodiment is in an entirely different dimension altogether. So there's a lot of factors. It depends on how long is this incarnation that we're talking about. How, if you're going to be a star, for example, and I know many of you have been, if you're going to be a star, that's a pretty long time, but you know what? Stars die. In fact, angels live longer than stars. If you're going to be a human, obviously, lots of different chances. If you're going to continue to play the game here on Earth, lots of chances to be a human, perhaps. Not everybody does that, though. Some people come and it's their first time being a human and it'll be their last, and then they'll go be something else. And also, incarnation doesn't just happen in the 3D. It happens in lots of dimensions, right? So if you just ended up in, say, the 5th dimension for a while, and then you end up here, your life is going to be a different length. Yeah. So someone says, why would they die? Why would they die? And that's just a word I use that makes sense to me. It's as if the candle got put out, really. It's not exactly death, but they just go right back to source. There's no pain involved. The angelic just simply get blown out. But that's very rare. I don't know if any of you've ever heard about some of the ancient stories about people wrestling angels. Well, they're not exactly an easy thing to kill. Good luck if you want to try. And that being said, the demonic are the same. But if you know my story in history with the demonic, I used to love to go chop heads off. And that wasn't not very fair. And I didn't give mercy. I didn't give a chance to those beings. And that, of course, is on my plate to continue to heal the damage I've done. So with that, all right, angels seem super focused. Yeah, no kidding, right? It's because they're one really specific, tight strand of light, just like us, but ours are longer and much more complex. Even though their lives are longer, we get to have more variety of experience in many different bodies. So that's something that's been coming up lately for people asking me questions about the soul and DNA. And then there's a new question that came up too as well. And it has to do with timelines. Oh, timelines. So someone was asking about how timelines work. How do timelines exist if they're not all linear? Are they like spirals or reality bubbles? All right, so let me try to explain time. And hey, if you really want to go into it even more deeply, come join me. I think it's going to be on the 31st. Let me check my calendar here for you.
It's the 30th.
It's the 30th. Thank you, Nikki. So on the 30th, I'm actually teaching a whole class about time. And we're going to go really deep. But let me explain how time really works in a nutshell. And then if you'd like to uncover this more deeply, just go to my homepage, seerandscientist.com, go to offerings, and the first class, The Playground of Time, is available right now for later in the month. So basically, I want you to imagine the universe. It's actually kind of looks like a bit of an apple shape, not a perfect round universe. And that apple shape is caused by two different toruses of spinning, meeting like this, right? Just like your body. So remember when I say we're commanding stuff and I say up, down, or out? It's because I'm using those two toruses. One torus goes all the way up, One goes all the way down, and some of that energy goes straight out. And that's how the universe looks. So the universe is actually moving and growing and shifting, but it still holds that kind of apple-shaped shape. Everything in existence that we know in this universe is contained in that. There is an ancient template of wisdom called the universe containing all things, which can help us visualize that. And so how do you really get with that? Well, it's just a matter of practice. Just like if you want to think about timelessness or formlessness, it's a matter of practice. Trust that that will come through for you. So with the universe containing all things, here it looks sort of like a bubble. Well, in it is actually contained all time as well. If you could imagine, it's like a book that doesn't have any ends. So it's a book that's circular, right? And it keeps going around and around and around. You never finish the story. That's what the infinite is all about. And in there is your lifetime in that story. If you flip it open, oh, well, there's Kathleen, or there's Elizabeth, or there's Nicole. And so we have this, and we're sharing part of the story together. But the story didn't go away. In fact, it's already ended at some point, and then it started again. That's how the infinite works. But linear time is a gift. That means that when we're in linear time, we actually get to co-create that reality. We get to choose how much power we're going to put to the timelines that we want to happen. That's part of how the game works. So the linear time is a wonderful playing ground for power. Can you, in the moment, stay at your 0 point, stay in that moment fully without leaking energy into the past or the future? And can you really embody all the power that you truly have access to in that moment to create your reality? That's what linear time is, and that's why it's a gift. So that sounds very complicated. Sit with it. Time is tricky, and we will discuss it more deeply later in the month. So let's keep looking at these messages that are coming through. Yeah, someone mentioned they want to know, where do the fallen angels come from, or the fallen archangels? Yeah. And also someone says, I have a resistance to angels. I'm told because I have a strong Buddhist experience in my soul record. And yet when I tune in, I feel angelic presences. However, I haven't related to people talk about the angels guiding them in a general way, as if they're giving up their power to the angelic. And also, what's up with Archangel Metatron? All right, I have my own, of course, perspective for you. Fallen angels. Well, you know, angels, just like us, are interested in power too. And when we say a fallen angel, that's what we mean. It's an angelic being who has bought into a certain agenda. Everybody's got an agenda. And that's just really what I think that means. Also, resistance to being guided by angels because you don't want to give away your power. That's really important, because eventually we are asked to embody the angelic realms. And recently, some very strange things have happened for me, where I've learned that I was being asked to embody that realm, and my guides, my 7 angels who I've talked to since I was a baby, they suddenly are not functioning outside of me anymore. They're within me now. And it took me about a month to get used to it, because I'm used to them just being there all the time. But you're right. We're actually being asked to allow guidance and source and all of the dimensions and all of the guides to be within us, to be part of us. That's oneness. And I think that's really important. So it depends on someone's journey. Sometimes they really like that interface, right? I really enjoyed having the angelic to bounce stuff off of all the time. I enjoyed them whispering behind my back when I was taking tests and, and all kinds of things. But now they're not separate from me anymore. And I think that that's part of what oneness is all about. No more separation. So with that too, what's up with Archangel Metatron? Archangel Metatron is not an angel. Metatron is actually from the 5th dimension. I've seen him for a very long time, off and on. He's incredible and beautiful and very, very arrogant. Because, here's the deal, from what I've seen, Metatron knew people were probably going to call him an angel and an archangel at that, and he didn't correct them. That's okay. We have a lot to learn anyway. And I like him. I think he's fine. I don't have any problem with him. He's not an archangel. So that's my opinion. The archangels look very different, and they act very different, and they speak very different. So when you compare the messages from people who've been channeling angels forever and then people who are channeling Metatron, they really do have a very different feel. But I'm going to leave that up to you and your discernment. When you're looking at channeled messages, use your heart and your gut, not your brain so much, to ask, is this true? Is this real? Is this of the light? Right? So we drop into the heart and we'd ask that yes or no question. And same with the gut. Don't forget to use your gut to discern messages. And even my own message that I just literally told you, ask your heart and your gut if it's true. That's really important. Don't just listen to anyone, including me, please. Always use your full body discernment to make sure that you're tapping into the truth as it pertains to your highest good. And that's always very key. Good teachers will say that. Don't just trust what I say. Discern. Discernment should always be a foundational part of any teaching. So please don't just take my word for it. All right, so let's keep looking at some of these questions. So Anda wants me to repeat the DNA replacement statement. Yes, very happy to. How about towards the end of our call today, we'll do it together, and we'll include some general stuff that our lineage might actually all have in common. And so we'll do it together a little later. And so, no, I don't actually think, sorry, I'm reading messages. I don't necessarily think Metatron's associated with the false matrix. I just think he's a very invested being who has a lot invested in humanity. That's all. I do think he wants to help, but he's, like I said, his messages often will be very different than a normal angelic message. Okay, so let's see. We will be getting to some things about the lineage a little bit later. Another question is, the angels are like a life stream. Does that mean that an archangel is a more evolved angel? No, it's just a different kind of angel. I don't actually think that there's more evolved angels. Each angel is just very, very different from any other angel. And some of them happen to have very specific jobs that make us think of them as maybe more evolved. Like, for example, Archangel Michael doesn't usually show up as a guardian, but guardians seem to have their own things going on, and most of them are incredibly different from each other. And then there's celestials, and then there's seraphim and cherubim, and they're just, each single angel is very different, and humans are used to hierarchy, so that's how we see them, as hierarchy, but that's not exactly how they work. Think of it more like a hive mind. They all have a specific angelic agenda that they're working on, and some of that's known to us and some of it is not. Yeah, I agree. The Metatron feel, someone says the Metatron feels just a little bit more like E.T., exactly. And that's also how I feel too. And so Sarah, be sure and go back. Sarah Stewart's asking about angels living here now. Go back to the recording. I did address this earlier. Okay, so really important, I'm shifting gears here. Let's talk about what's going on the planet at the moment. We've had this big solar flare. It's tossing a lot of things up. I want to talk about eddies. What I've been seeing is, I like to take an eagle's point of view. I like to zoom in and zoom out all the time. It keeps me stable. Because if I go in too deep, then I'll lose myself. If I zoom out and stay there, I'll lose myself. And so zooming in and out is kind of my job. So when I'm zooming out, I'm seeing all these different really big, huge sort of vortexes of energy, creating eddies and spinning. You might have seen, for example, videos where they describe currents in the ocean. And you'll see one current moving and then all these little mini currents coming off of it. And I'm seeing a few very large sort of currents of energy all over the earth and all these other eddies happening. That's always been there, but now it's way more intense. And I believe that what I'm looking at is global consciousness, is human global consciousness. And it used to be that there were so many vortexes that I couldn't really keep up, and now there isn't. Now there's all this energy that is actually different than what I've seen before. It's like it all combined together. I think what's going on are that soul groups are getting activated. And what does that mean? Well, it turns out that in this whole discussion around the soul, a lot of us, maybe even you and me, have reincarnated together in certain places at certain times in certain ways, many times. And I think that that's what's happening. A lot of different soul groups are starting to figure out that they're all part of the same group. For example, even though I'm not a collective empath, I'm surrounded in collective empaths. And I'm not surrounded in psychics. I'm surrounded in collective empaths. And I have never seen that being a collective empath is a very common thing. But yet, here you are, and many of you are collective empaths. That means to me that for whatever reason, the current that I'm in has to do with the collective empaths right now. And I think the main reason is because my agenda, my goal is the same. I'm here to help illuminate the dark energy that needs to be shifted off the planet in order to create balance. And the collective empath literally does that by existing. So that's what I'm noticing. And then here's all these smaller eddies. So for example, if there's one big vortex that shows up, then all these eddies are going to come out and start affecting people. And I'm seeing that literally going on. On one part of the world, there'll be a terrible event or a positive event. And then there's going to be outcomes that come from that event. And that's really important because those are eddies. So for example, recently we saw a terrible event happen in New Zealand that was very racist and very painful. Murder going on. That was not news that I initially knew about, but I could feel this big wave, a big eddy coming through and affecting many of the collective empaths that I surround myself with. They weren't able to identify it right away, and neither was I. It was like it just sort of came like a storm out of nowhere. And then we were able to finally hear that news and we recognized it. But this is really actually good news, because that means that the human consciousness is so intimately connected now that an event in New Zealand instantaneously is felt in the United States, felt and understood at a psychic level, at an energetic level. That means that our unity consciousness is coming online, and the earth is helping us do that. So although that was a terrible experience, it is a really prime measurable example that we are so intimately connected, and it's only getting stronger every day. So pay close attention to that in your life as this comes up. All right, so yes, so Kathy says, I just had a dream where I was lifted up into a vortex. Yeah, exactly. I think you'll start to notice all these soul groups activating and these eddies and vortexes happening. All right, so there is a request that we might do a live Q&A check-in if you like, and certainly we can. If you'd like to share live, I offer you to go ahead and unmute, but before we do, I'd like to speak with you about our circle on Slack. We've been getting together, and just last night we did a healing circle. We were able to put one individual in the center of our circle and do healing for her, and it was really gentle and profound. And Nikki, who's here now, was able to actually facilitate that yesterday while I was there to help hold space too. It was really beautiful and sweet and so gentle and loving. And of course, that person's going to get held by us all week. And that's the kind of fun things and healing things that we're doing on our Slack right now. So Slack is actually an online platform where we're gathering via either your app or your computer or your iPad and being able to chat with each other in real time. I'm on there all day long. In real time, we're sharing stuff. It's an alternative to the noise going on in social media. And honestly, I love it so much, I'm not even on Facebook anymore. And I'd really love it if you'd like to come and join us. We've been having a really good time sharing, supporting one another, being able to hold each other in that light. And I just love it so much. I hope that you'll come join us. If it interests you, go to seerandscientist.com, go to the circle, and then you can sign up there. It's $13 a month. And listen, if you don't have that right now, we have a scholarship. So just email me at Elizabeth@SeerandScientist, and I'm happy to help you out. If you need scholarship for a little while, come and join us. Come get some support if that resonates with you. And you know, some people, they've gone on and it was really nice for a little while and then they got busy. That's okay. It's not there for you to have to feel like you have to post, but rather there to support you. We do a daily meditation every day. We have a monthly question we play with. We have a healing and processing corner. It's been really special, and it's continuing to grow. Lots of wisdom, art, poetry. We have our resident mystic poet, Flower Diamond, who gets to post for us a lot. And she helps us so much with her poems. I used to really not like poetry very much, and now I do. So I hope you'll join me if that resonates with you. All right, so I'm here for you. If you want to talk live, let's talk. And you can unmute yourself, and if we have any overlap, I'll handle it.
But I have a question.
Great. I'm here.
Is it me?
It's you.
Okay, I don't know how to ask a question. Just teach me how to ask a question on this platform.
Yes, there should be like a little chat thingy.
There isn't on my thing. It's mute, stop video, share content, and participants.
Okay. We'll work on doing a little bit of a training.
Just do it. You're right there.
What did she say?
I said, do your question now, because we all want to hear it.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
do it. That was the whole point, is that you can unmute yourself so you can ask it orally.
Exactly. Because some
right.
people,
Well, that's basically my question, because I like to be in the moment and ask questions as they come up. And right now, it's like under more, it's kind of like I could raise my hand, but I can't comment. I can hide my video. I don't want to do that. I can disconnect. I don't want to do that. It's just I don't know where to. So I'll unmute myself. I'll mute myself again, and maybe somebody could answer that. I don't know.
Oh, sure.
I'm on an iPhone.
Gotcha. Let me look into it for you.
Okay. All right.
I'm pretty new to this program, and we're.
I love being able to see everybody.
I know, me too.
The ones who, if the ones who want to show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Okay.
I got you covered. We'll work on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
All right. So I have Maureen. You're on live, so I can actually hear you now. If you can speak, I saw that you raised your hand, and I'd like to answer your question if it's coming up. Maureen? Hi, Maureen.
Can you hear me?
I can. How can I help you?
Oh, I have a question, and I did put it in the chat, so I'm asking again.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it got lost.
That's okay. I just put it in. I have a funny question. It's
Go for it.
lately, it's just been in the last 2-3 weeks. It's actually wonderful, but I have been in a not constant, but almost constant blissful state.
Yes.
And I have been doing tons of clearing, tons of connecting. I feel my angels and guides more powerfully than ever before, but I still feel that relationship can be even strengthened more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, part of me thinks, like, I don't want to get into fear, but part of me thinks a little bit, as far up as I can go, I'm afraid of coming down. So I kind of think maybe it's good to just kind of try to stay in balance,
Mm-hmm.
But it feels so good at the same time. And I feel so trusting and connected. And I was thinking, what have I been doing differently? And I've definitely been almost constantly, kind of reminding myself to be in the balanced pillar of light sort of state, because I want to be a conduit and for good energy coming here. And then, but also physically, I've been taking diatomaceous earth for a month. And I just was curious if that only works physically, or if that's been assisting assisting me in clearing away old stuff that used to really bother me.
Yeah, good question. And sorry, I swallowed my tea wrong. Okay, so first off, when you hit a blissful state and you're in there and you're like, oh boy, is this going to go away? That to me is a sign that you've embodied some new dimension. And when that sense of things getting closer and more connected starts to happen, you're just going onward and upward. It's all about the ascension process. And one of the signs of that is that you feel more connected. You end up perhaps even having contact with beings and guides that you didn't before. And having a sense of that really wonderful bliss of formlessness going on. And this happens to us when we do all of that processing, when we move more and more dark and dense energy out of the way, when we clean up our trauma, our ego structures like attachments, judgment, expectations, and resistance. And you've been working on that for a long time, Maureen.
I have.
And here's the outcome. You get all this light, and then you get to embody higher dimensions. That's the whole point. And yes, diatomaceous earth can absolutely help you a lot, especially if you've been suffering from candida. And candida can cloud up your gut mind, and that gut mind has a direct effect on your brain mind. And so if your gut mind's getting nice and cleaned up and the good bacteria are able to get reestablished, then you're going to have a clearer mind. You're going to feel happier because there's specific bacteria in the gut that are there to help you actually feel happy. They regulate serotonin and dopamine, among other things. And so the connection with your gut and your heart and your brain is so intimate and so completely ruled by bacteria that when you move bad things out of the way that are kind of cloud you up, like candida or bad bacteria or viruses, then you will actually have a more blissful state. So that's those two things combined, Maureen. And no, you're not going to crash. Just keep clearing. Keep clearing, and you'll find that you'll continue to have these blissful experiences. And don't be surprised if you actually plateau a little bit. That's different than coming down. So it's different than a crash. You just get used to that state of being. Does that make sense, Maureen?
It does. Yeah, I thank you. It's really awesome news.
Yes, congratulations.
I'm like, wow. And I almost feel like, you know, when I'm around people who are my good friends and I'm in a happy state, like I'm almost ridiculously positive and complimentary. And people must think, what are you, some kind of little Pollyanna? But in the winter time, I do find that I sink into a lower mood usually. And I try to keep that going, but it's a little harder. But lately, it's been back to people around me are probably going, what is up with you?
Here, the spring comes and Maureen pops out like a beautiful flower.
Oh, so well, that's good to hear. Oh, yeah.
I'm glad to share that. Yeah.
You make it so good. Thank you.
No problem. And yeah, don't be surprised, you know, everyone, if you find that you end up in a position where your solar cycles will show up. So when winter comes, you're a little bit lower. That's normal. And then I think that when we do that, we need to get out and really force ourselves out in the cold to be in that sunshine, among other things, connecting to nature even though it's cold. Because being pent up in a house is entirely unnatural for a human. You've probably heard my, you might have heard my spiel about houses before. Okay, so I'm just going through about...
Elizabeth, I have a question.
Oh, good. Thanks, Nikki.
It's a DNA question.
Great.
Going back to when you first started to talk about, so the DNA history that is related to the fact that we are in this skin suit body is the history that has to do with our lineage, our ancestors, previous earth experiences, et cetera, all of which are imprinted somewhere in our coding, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so the soul history, it's the way that you described it this morning is kind of a epiphany for me, because I've kind of had those two strewn together. Sure. In a way in my head, if you will. So so separating out the soul history that way, having to do with, you know, well, fairies, of course, and, you know, elephants and whales and stars and planets, etc. Is that not then necessarily a part of our actual light-coded DNA within our bodies?
No, totally separate. But here's where it combines. So if you've had multiple human experiences, that's going to be included in your soul's experience. But honestly, most of us don't end up even incarnating in the same ethnicity or the same culture, and certainly not the same time.
Right.
And then, so that's what's going to be left in the soul's history when you leave the bodysuit. Then you'll be able to, of course, reassess your own soul history from there because it's fully accessible at that point. And then the bigger picture of what you're here to do in this galaxy, for example, shows up. However, then if you do choose to incarnate into a human body again, you're going to incarnate and you're going to have to learn about and or look at an incredibly different set of lineage information that's in that embodiment. And let's just say that some of those ancestors were highly enlightened, perhaps. Well, in that new DNA bodysuit, that new disc of DNA that you get access to, all that information of that lineage, enlightenment might be on there. Or lots of horrible trauma, or both. So then, of course, then you leave again, and then you get to have, oh, well, there's that information I learned from that lifetime in that soul history. So they act very, very different, even though as a soul, you have direct effect on what gets written on that DNA and what's going to get passed down. So, for example, my children, they're going to have a specific set of information come from my embodiment and my experiences and what I've learned in this embodiment. And so then they'll have inherited that in their DNA directly. But while that affects their soul history, they themselves, of course, have a very separate set of histories because, well, their dad has a completely different set of DNA histories versus mine. So each person is so incredibly unique. It's a very complicated equation here, how these two histories combine at different points through our experience in these bodies. Does that make better sense?
Well, so if we are coming into a physical body again,
yeah,
as a different whatever, forget about ethnicity and gender and all that, just the fact that we are going to take on a skin suit again on this planet, let's say, then my history and my lineage as Nikki is not going to be with me.
No, it's not. Though what you've learned about it will. So let's say you spend time learning about it. All that memory will be in your soul. All that memory and knowledge will be in your soul. So no, the lineage and the history itself, if, for example, you chose not to look at that at all, no, you're not going to end up having that in your soul's history memory. But if you did choose to look at it, then it will. So it depends on what that choice of the soul is in the body at the time.
Wow. And then one more thing about the other soul histories of all of these, places we've been and experiences that we've had as other beings.
Yes.
Galactics or earth, animals, birds, whatever, crystals. So those, when someone was asking about, I've done a lot of past life regression and I don't feel like it's really helped me much. It's given me some compassion and forgiveness about, why I might have felt a certain way about a person initially, meeting them and not having any context for that. But that hasn't really been that helpful to my soul's path. Mm-hmm. But what I do believe, and I would like for you to just comment on this, is that some of those other soul journeys and my remembrances would be very helpful to me right now.
Right.
As opposed to, the time that I starved to death in a dungeon. Right. I mean, I get that we've all done. That was actually a really recent one that I did, and it was like, okay, well, that was really drawn out and long. And
no kidding, right?
But you know what I mean? It's like I can see where some of those might be really helpful in individual situations for individual humans at this point, related to something that's really a major, thing for them right now. But my my question right now really has to do more with, aren't there other remembrances? I love that word, remembering, putting that together. Remembrances that would be really potent right now that are non-human, possibly, and that's how it's feeling. It's more like, some mastery lifetime.
Exactly.
As who knows what. But anyway, I'm going to mute myself so you can answer
Sure.
that. Thank you.
So usually when someone asks me about this, because this is a fairly common question, I like to go at it and say, first off, we can really look at our soul histories. Some people have a name for it, right? I never even heard this word until a few years ago, but that just sort of shows, that I came into this work in a very different way. I came out of the basement and everyone's like, who are you? How did you show up here? And I'm like, science. So the Akashic records, people call them the Akashic records. And yes, you can go in and you can dig into the Akashic records, and a lot of times you'll find lots of useful things and sometimes you won't. It's sort of like trying to dig through a giant library and nothing's labeled. So you're trying to find something useful. Well, everything's going to be useful in a certain way, shape, or form.
Or a massive archaeological site.
Yeah, exactly. Or like some crazy site and you don't even know what you're looking for exactly. So this is when I always say, look, at that point, we have to ask. One of the biggest things humans have a really hard time with is just simply asking. And asking in the right way. For example, we don't necessarily need a yes or no question. We need a question that's going to really blow things open for us. So in this case, Nikki, I'll say, show me a lifetime where, for example, we'll take a challenge. So a block, a challenge, an obstacle. I'll say, show me a lifetime if this is what this person needs to see, right? Then I'll say, show me a lifetime where they were fully able to overcome this challenge. And you know what? Every time I'll end up seeing it, because a lot of times the challenges and blockages that we've experienced them many times. Probably because we come through to heal certain polarities, to look at very specific things, or we have a certain agenda as a soul that we're here to work on. And so with that, I'll get to see a lifetime where they were overcoming that challenge, and then we'll try to interface with that part of their soul and ask more detailed questions. How exactly did you overcome that? What tools did you use? What was your knowledge base at that time? Right? So that's one way. And then we can also ask, has this challenge arisen multiple times? Of course, sometimes yes, and sometimes no. So it just depends on the person and what they've experienced. But I find that this is the challenge. People want to be able to see that stuff. They want to have psychic access to it, or at least be able to feel the information coming through for them. And that's where it's like, hey, can past life regression help? Yes, and sometimes no. I find that just like any body of knowledge, you want to approach with specific questions you're trying to answer. And the past life world is the same way. Go with specific questions you want answers to, and the soul will often give you the answer. If you're patient, and of course, if you're working on processing, mental, emotional, physical processing, meditating every day, making sure that you're noticing all of your egoic structure, working on that, cleaning up your density or dark energy. As you're doing that more and more will be revealed, including the ability to be more psychic. Everyone is psychic. Every single person is psychic. Every single person is an empath. And every single person has intuition. These are the gifts of the body, and you can access them more as you shift more density out of the way. And then you get to be able to see more clearly. Of course, when you do ask those questions, see and perceive and feel more clearly those answers. Because all of it's available. So it's how you frame your question, then you're going to get more clear answers. That's, I think, the most valuable way of approaching past lives, Nikki.
I love it, because what I'm thinking is I wasn't thinking so much of challenges as I was. So it's brilliant, because I just was able to formulate the question. Yeah. And ask.
Yeah.
Because I always forgot to put it in terms of right now. What came to me is what history, past, present, or future, whatever you want to call it, history, would most benefit me at this point in my current evolution and incarnation.
Yes, exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you. Love you.
No problem. Love you too. So have a couple of folks. Oh, hi, Kathleen.
Hi, I wonder, can you see the energy behind the left side of my head in the sky?
Oh, yes. That's, I believe, your screen.
It is? Because when I changed...
I mean, you're full of lots of energy.
But I mean, I feel like it's like, I don't know. It's just like, what is going on there?
It was pretty neat. What it is the way the light's bouncing off the screen on the inside of the window.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
You have lots of energy around you. It's true.
Oh, okay. Yikes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Some folks have been posting about having children or not having children. And it's true. So many beautiful souls are welcomed into these bodies, and they feel very strongly that not having children is part of the way they're going to stop the trauma that's continued to be going on in their lives. And then others will actually literally feel the opposite. There is no wrong way to do that, my friends. Absolutely, if you don't feel called to have children, that is 100% okay. Because you know what? That doesn't mean that your lineage ends. You do have to understand that the lineage doesn't just come down in its singular fashion. DNA is an incredibly expansive experience that we're only just now tapping into. And for example, many of my siblings have chose not to have any children, and they're much happier healing their lineage on their own without having children. And for me, having kids gave me an opportunity to learn how to stop all the madness. So it just depends on what you're called to. There's no right or wrong in that. It's simply what it is. Listen to your heart and gut. Follow that. That's your discernment. That's number one. Doesn't matter what I say. Doesn't matter what any person says. Follow your gut. Absolutely key. Very, very important. Someone asked about the new kids. What about the new children? They don't seem to have our low vibes. Aren't they an incarnation of our higher self? No, the higher self is the soul. So there's one soul at a time. However, you're right. A lot of kids coming in onto the planet. And you know what? The planet is so different now than, say, even when I was born, which wasn't that long ago. The planet's so different now. All the generations over the past couple of decades, they're very different. And they'll continue to be different. And, yes, they do inherit a certain amount of trauma in their DNA, but they're not going to have the same problems because they didn't come into the same matrix Earth situation that we all have. So I'm already looking at that in my own kids. My kids came in fully knowing what their powers were and understanding them, which is a lot of power there. And for me, that's not at all what happened. I certainly had plenty of power, but whether I understood it or not, well, I'm still trying to understand it. But my kids, one of them One of them's a rebuilder. That's my son. He's a healer and a rebuilder. He's an empath. My daughter, Kindle, who's 4, she's a queen. She's a sovereign. My little one, who's 2, she's a healer, and she's really good at it. She's good at sacred sitting and at healing, and all of my kids know what their power is. And I think that's really telling us something, how the new generations are quite different. And so Belinda says, I feel like we're coming into a time where we're going to go forward and leave all this detective work out of our past, in our past. It's time to start figuring out what you want to be when you grow up. I love it. It's true. Yeah, we do need to leave the past in the past. In certain circumstances, the past can be useful, but as I've pointed out, we're all forerunners now. The earth has never been here before. This is new territory. There aren't any books written about this moment, what we're going through. There's lots of things written about what people thought might happen, but that was just a single timeline they got a glimpse of, not the billions of possibilities and timelines that are really in front of us. And of course, you know, as we're carving our way out and navigating our way through these new energies, we will learn and we will share what we've learned. We're the ones who are writing the next new ancient books. It's us. So I think that's really key. Yeah, Krista says, I want to write a book of now. Me too. All right, so then we have Kathy. What are your thoughts on eating animals versus being vegetarian? Good question. So I've actually addressed this multiple times, and I have a very simple way of looking at it. Discernment for yourself is absolutely 100% key. And if you're going to drop into your embodiment and ask what is right for you, you need to ask your heart and your gut and do it regularly. What is comfortable for you may change and evolve. And furthermore, if you really go down into the quantum levels of reality and you take a piece of meat and a vegetable and you look at it carefully, they are made of the same thing. They are made of light. Use that knowledge as you will. I have zero problem with whatever diet is going to work best for you, your heart, your experience. I think that human beings haven't evolved that much, not physically. And it is important to consider our ancient ancestors' diets being very useful to us at this time, because modern diets are certainly not working, are they? So consider those factors and discern for yourself always. Drop into your heart, your gut, and ask regularly what's going to work best for you. That's my opinion on that. So Daki says, it feels to me as if when I'm clearing programs, I hit a collective hole. Like last week, I cleared my energy can be taken by others. Big one. I replaced it with light and love and seemed to feel as if many past life clips cleared and continued to flow. It's as if the program was a dam holding my soul's collective wisdom at bay, so that this program could release just exactly now. This seems quite different from your recommendation to track traumas and specifically replace energy. I see myself taking a ride within Earth's ascension and less about my personal issues. I think what you're doing is actually right in line about what I'm saying. When we replace energy, it can actually cause sort of like a ripple effect. And a lot more can shift because of that. Or if we're targeting something like a trauma we've tracked and we shift that out of our density, it's going to release a whole bunch of other stuff. That's true. It's sort of like in an archaeological site. If you're going to go in and you're digging a layer of dirt out of the way, well, you're going to find another layer of dirt to shift, one that you never saw before. And then you move that away, and again, you end up with the unfolding of your experience, just as that. So keep working at the density, because every little tiny linchpin you pull is going to open up a whole nother can of worms for you to clean and clear, and then more and more is going to happen. So that's why working on this, working on trauma, working on egoic structure is so important. It's how you have access again to that whole other flow that you were mentioning. Good. Looking at questions still here. So Kathy asked a question apparently, and I don't know if I answered it or not. Oh yes, so Daki mentioned that it showed up in a really mundane. Oh, Kathy, I was able to answer the question, it looks like. Okay. So yeah, that the clearing, the intense clearing, the huge big burst of clearing that happened was simply from a mundane trigger from her housemate. Perfect. It's even better when little stuff really gets to you, and then you follow that thread and you pull that plug, and ta-da, a whole bunch of stuff cleans out. You never know what it's going to be. That's why paying attention to your reactions and your triggers are so important. All right. Anyone else want to speak to me live? We still have 40 minutes to hang out together. So Nicole Connolly asks, can you please give examples of more fruitful questions to ask to promote remembrances? Well, I think actually the best approach that I've got is that same one, Nicole. Look at what the problems that you're looking at are, the blocks and the obstacles in the moment, and go from there. That's kind of going to be your framework for looking at the past lives that might have info for you, or even in reality in the moment without looking at past lives, saying, all right, here's a framework, a question of how am I going to best get through this challenge? What are the tools and the energies and qualities of light that I need to bring in? What are the things I need to shift out? How have I done it before, in this lifetime or other lifetimes? Those are the ways that I would approach it. That way, you've got a very clear way to utilize all that knowledge instead of it just being so overwhelming in your face. And then you'll get used to coming up with, okay, well, I remember that past life and some of the things I did that were similar to this one, or that one really informs me about what not to do, like so many of my lifetimes. I'm like, wow, was I really that horrible? Yes, I was. So that's okay. Then we really can learn a lot from all of that. So good question. Someone asked, can our physical body live in two timelines at the same time? No, impossible. However, there is a loophole. If you're healing your own trauma, you've probably heard me talk about healing frozen, traumatized selves. If you're healing your own trauma, you can take a past version of yourself that was traumatized and put them on a branch off timeline. Then you're taking all the triggers and all of the reactiveness of your events that have happened. You're not erasing them. You're simply taking that part of your experience, your subconscious soul self that didn't actually go anywhere, and you're giving them a new branch off timeline to hang out on, one that's much more pleasant, but it's simply like that. It's a branch that has an end. So it's like a little time loop, sort of like a little branch that's a circle. So that's the only way that, for example, an aspect of your consciousness can seemingly be in a different timeline. is when you do work on healing yourselves that have been traumatized in this lifetime. So for example, in one of my trauma points, I was able to take the version of me, the younger version of me who's traumatized, take her, give her a new scenario, a new little cool loop to hang out on, a brand new scenario, and then take the charge off of my actual timeline where I've been traumatized. That way I can value what's happened to me without the reaction, without the charge. That's really the only way that someone can have multiple aspects of time going on at once. And then you're getting your subconscious self out of the way so that they're not running the show anymore and you can be present. But it's impossible to live in two timelines at once. It would actually probably cause some kind of crazy rift, like Back to the Future stuff or something. So time's tricky. Time's tricky. It's a very difficult concept because it's so quantum and so out there, and really time itself is very timeless. Okay. So someone is asking, I'm reading questions again. There are moments when I feel like Rip Van Winkle, that I've been sleeping as I see the very street that I drive on a lot seems completely different, especially in the last couple months. Life is so fast right now. Yeah, so that too. Time's happening faster, it's true. I'm sure you've noticed that suddenly we're in March. How the heck did that happen? Well, people are, in general, collectively experiencing time differently because, well, actually we're in a different place in space, literally. And so that's affecting everything. The way the sun's acting, where the galaxy is at any point in time. All these things have an incredible effect on everything else. Remember, zoom out and take a look at this stuff. You have access to it too. Zoom in and zoom out, and you'll find that you're going to learn a lot more about the bigger picture and how everything works in a very profound way. It's literally the only way I can live, zooming in and out all the time. Okay. So Svetlana has an interesting question about plants and energy here, and that kind of leads us a little bit into a question that was proposed to me earlier today. Svetlana says, I'm a big fan of flowers and plants, and I grow them everywhere at home, and I work and had noticed lately that they're not doing well by losing leaves, and the one that remains is getting sick and discolored. Is this because of intense light? Sometimes, yes. So just like all of us, the plants and animals are getting affected by the solar storms too. Light's changing, the atmosphere's changing, everything's changing, friends. And there will be a lot of things in our life around us that seem that everything's kind of strangely not just, kind of strangely going crazy. And so that's something I think we'll find more and more and more, okay? Pay attention to it. Be conscious of it. Be conscious for the spiritual causes of things and the emotional causes of things and how they're all usually all interwoven together, right? So that's sort of like what Daniel asked me. Is there a spiritual cause for alopecia? Well, yes and no. Alopecia is certainly a genetic issue, and it's because of trauma that occurred to your ancestors. So Daniel, make sure go back to the recording, listen to the beginning, because I talk very deeply about the ancestry piece and how trauma is a spiritual and a physical effect on everything about us, including genetic disorders like alopecia. So, sorry, I'm reading some comments here. All right, so Maureen, you have your your hand raised. I'm sorry, I missed you. You're live again. How can I help you? What's come up?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to take up too much time asking 2 questions, so as
Fine.
long as it's okay. Okay, well, something else did come up, and yeah, I am managing to stay positive through this, but something that's been happening for the last few years is I have a teenage son,
Mm.
and he is having a really difficult time right now, and I don't know how to help him. He doesn't want to go to school. He's tries everything to not go, and he absolutely hates it. And I'm of 2 minds. Like, I guess part of, maybe it's the old part of me, is concerned about him getting that high school diploma because it will help in the 3D world out there. And then another part of me thinks just trust him and let him be. But I guess I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah, Maureen, this is a really hard one because right now I'm being asked to look at whether or not I'm going to send my own kids to school. And having had experience in all 3 school possibilities, public school, private school, and homeschooling, I personally believe that our school systems are incredibly false, that they are unnatural, and they force unnatural concepts, ideas, and ways of being on children that are not how human beings evolved at all. And so when I was homeschooled, I was much happier, and I was able to lead my own schooling to the point where by the time I graduated high school, I had a 2-year college degree because I got to go at my pace, which was just happened to be a bit quicker than most of the kids around me. And that's okay. Some kids are actually a little slower, but that's the thing. Why would we even put concepts like that on kids? You're doing slower than everyone else. You're doing faster than everyone else. That's crazy. They're such complete, totally individual beings. You can't sit and constantly cause children to compare themselves to one another and not come out a little screwed up. I would like to basically say, Maureen, give him a chance to look at unit learning. Let me explain. So unit learning is a homeschool technique where you ask someone, what's your greatest love right now? So for me, all through my homeschool years, it was birds. For my little brother, it was like 1 year it was the Titanic. The next year it was trains. The next year it was something else. So it can obviously change every year. But you can draw every subject out of one subject. You want to go look at rock music for an entire year? You can pull math, writing, grammar, physics. You can pull anything out of just looking at rock music, or as I did, birds. I pulled everything out of just looking at birds. I went and I worked at a bird aviary. I learned how to do business math. I learned how to do really complex geometric math. I built barns. I learned how to write essays and do research and learn science and do art. Everything got pulled out of a single subject that I loved. I loved with a passion. I ended up raising over 5,000 birds, and everyone calls me the bird whisperer. So that's the thing. I think, Maureen, trust your heart and gut on this. It's trying to say to you, hey, maybe he's got a point. He so desperately doesn't want to go into that false system. There are other ways for him to succeed and get a diploma. And there's other ways for him to enjoy it. And you know what? If he can be a self-starter and he really wants to give that a try, by golly, let him. I think you'll save him. I think you'll help him more than ever by trusting him on that. Give him that chance to be able to show that he's capable and even pull incredible subject out of things that he loves that you wouldn't have ever thought were possible. And he'll be able to show you what he's really capable of. It's his opportunity. that's how I feel about it, Maureen, and I hope that you'll take that and sit with that and see how it feels for you.
Oh, thank you. I feel the very same way about the school system, and then just locked into this silly idea of the world around us and him somehow needing that. But I guess I feel not equipped to teach a high school student, but then you're right. And at the same time, I don't know if he's the self-starter either.
Then
So,
look at unit learning curriculums that are already made.
okay.
And that's what we did. And you know what? My mom never helped me. I had it all in books and followed the curriculum, and actually I finished most of my stuff way ahead of time. So, you know, it was in front of me, and it was like, hey, if you can do all of this, no matter how fast you do it, then you'll have finished 8th grade. And I did it in like 3 months. And then I went on and I continued on into higher education, and I loved it. But not everyone is asked to do that or equipped to do that. And you don't have to be equipped to homeschool, because there's all kinds of amazing curriculums and things to use already that are created for you. Look at that. There's so much available at this point, and it's just an idea, an option. Play with that. You don't necessarily have to be the one who is teaching at all. And a lot of these curriculums include online services and support. So he can ask literally someone who's got a master's in mathematics for math help. We did that too, and it was really helpful. Good.
I think that. Thank you. I wish I would have homeschooled my kids when they were little. That was something I wanted to do, but their fathers were against it.
Sure.
But I'll talk to him and see what we can come up with together.
Yeah, I think that'll be really profound for him. I'm
Okay.
glad. Hey, good luck, and I'm always here for you. If you want somebody to take a look at a curriculum, email me and I'll look at them for you. I have lots of experience with that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and you know, disclaimer on that, you know how busy I am, but I always do try to get to it.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too. Hi, Joy. I've unmuted you. Can you hear me?
Hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Yay. Okay, good. Thanks. Hey, so you were mentioning the skills that your children have.
Yes.
And as I've been opening up to various things, you know, the big question I have is, how do we really identify what that skill or talent or where we're supposed to go? How do we most identify that? Or
For yourself or your kids?
no, well, for me, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, Joy, having a session with me, either via group call or even just a short little session, I can do that for you easily. It needs to be in session, though, because a lot of times there's really special, specific training that needs to be done so that you can understand and utilize those skills better. And then, of course, there is also the option. I do have several classes I've taught about the subject. One of them is more recent, called Skill Sets 101. And it's all about what are the skill sets, and, of course, my technique about how you might be able to discern which ones are yours. And that can be helpful. But honestly, the number one way to really learn is to go to see an oracle or someone who can see that kind of thing, whether it's me or someone else. And trusting your gut when you're reading about skill sets, for example. Like when I did the classes about skill sets, I list them off in great detail, and I list also the advanced versions, because every skill set has advanced versions. And then I teach people to follow their heart and gut, to listen to their body while they're listening to the list, and check and see what really pops up into your field. Like, wow, I resonate with that one, even though I have no experience being a warrior. I feel like I have this warrior skill set. because I can feel it in my whole body. And so that's another way that if you want to go dig in a little bit into those lists of skill sets, that can be a really great way to discover what's clicking with your soul. But I wish I could give you more direct help at the time. It would take us quite a while, and you'd want some one-on-one personal training for that. We can do that in a group call, no problem, or in any sort of call together. Is that okay, Joy?
Sure. I also want to thank you. You helped me in another session with my inner child, and I had some great response to my. You mentioned the just born child, and boy, did she have a lot to say.
Wow! Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
So I want to thank you for that, because it was very helpful, and it was a great opening for me. So thank you.
My pleasure. You know, I've found that doing the healing on our past selves, our traumatized selves, some of the most profound work I've ever done in myself and for others, walking them through that, and then them being able to take that technique along for all those other versions of you and seeing the results it's so profound. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so as you can see, some of you have the ability to raise your hand. So if you do want to speak around this, I'm open. Okay, so let's see. Going back up to my little messages here. So whenever you see me look over to the side, that's what I'm doing.
I just wanted to put in a word about your soul skill set retreat that you recently did. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I would recommend everyone look at that who has any question about what it is they're here to do. And I mean, the whole retreat was amazing. The first part is so full of information that you can, like, on a replay, you can pause it and take notes, because it's overwhelming the way that Elizabeth was able to articulate how many there are. So I think it's really a wonderful thing for people to go and look at and explore.
Thank you, Nikki. And so if you want to check that one out, it's called Soul Skills 101. And it's on my little store on Seer and Scientist. Go down to offerings, and you can actually search over on the side under classes or the Applied Multidimensionality series. So the classes, I teach one each month, and there's 9 altogether this year that are going to be all sort of a big series of classes that work together. So they each build on one another. And we'll be doing our 3rd one this month. Each are sold separately, but you'll be able to find it there under offerings. It's Soul Skills Sets 101. Yeah, that was a really great call. I really enjoyed it very much, and I got called out for teaching too fast, which was a very good call out, and very profound things came from it. So I hope you all will enjoy.
And I did post your March 30th class in the chat room for people to look at.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that was up on there earlier. Right. Okay, so someone's asking me about Metatron again. And yes, I love Waldorf. I love all the alternative ways of teaching children that are much more natural. And certainly coming from the Rudolf Steiner world, I very much love Rudolf Steiner's work in biodynamics, and then that kind of branched into Waldorf work as well. Very important stuff. I think that's a really great way to approach teaching children. And so, sorry, I'm going through questions again, friends. Yeah, so you know what? Leela and lots of folks are mentioning they get really overwhelmed with what's true, what's not true. You know, there's so much information. One teacher says one thing, another says another. This is why personal discernment is so important. Because you're going to want to follow your gut and heart into what you see and feel is right for you. That's more important than anything I'll ever say. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you discern is true. That's what matters. That's why you'll hear me all the time say, does that make sense? Does that feel right? Does that resonate with you? Because that information, it's coming to you. It's going to get run through your experience. It's going to get run through your ego. It's going to get run through anything in your way and anything that's helping you. And then it's going to come to you in a form that's either right or wrong for you. And so you're only going to get what you really need to know in that moment, whether it's that it's the truth or not. So the best way for you to really understand that is to use your heart and gut. To look at that very carefully every time, every day. Don't worry about what I say about Metatron or Thoth or whomever. It doesn't matter. It matters what you feel is true in your embodiment with your soul. So that's my last message around Metatron. Good. All right, so let's see. Wow, thank you, Sandy. What a very nice, kind compliment. I do appreciate that. Oh, soul parts. So Maria's asking about soul parts, things, parts of our soul that get lost. Oh, yes, that can happen. You leave all sorts of little bits and pieces around. I always say that human beings are sort of like big lint rollers, right? And we go around and we pick up a lot of different energy. However, we leave stuff behind too. In fact, that's actually an important skill, knowing how to go somewhere and do things in the world without leaving energy behind. And that's something that I can't really exactly teach you how to do. It is mysticism, navigating energy, understanding power, understanding how energy works. And the way I learned it was actually by being around people who also did that same thing. So I just want to, say it can be a very specific kind of skill to be able to leave no energy behind. A mystical skill that really can only be learned by being around people who do it. However, if you've left stuff behind, it can be retrieved. Again, this is one of those things where being able to simply ask and perhaps command all of your soul bits to come back. And if you need to have help facilitating that, being able to be in someone's space who can help you to see that, perceive it, and help you command all of those pieces back for you, that's very helpful. So if you feel like you have bits and pieces of your soul energy left over all over the place and you want them back, consider simply going into meditation and asking every day for those pieces to come back until you feel fulfilled. Or get together with someone in session and have them facilitate that with you. So yes, that is a thing. Leaving energy behind. Leaving our pieces of our souls behind. Okay. So now we have a really interesting question around viruses. Right. Anda says, if you need soul retrieval, do it with a sincere and I would add ethical shaman. And you're right, Anda. Parallel lives do exist. Parallel timelines and lives do exist. To be in two at once cannot. We will be addressing all of that in our discussion around time later this month, which is going to be quite fun because we've got some really interesting things to examine around time, that's for sure. Yes, yes, of course. Always we want to work with ethical people. Yes, and you're correct. I will be guiding you shortly. We'll finish this last question. And then let's go in and we're going to do a lineage cleanup together with some general, pretty common stuff that everybody deals with. So the last question I'll answer now is, can you use the frequencies of certain viruses in your body to mutate in a positive way? There is no limits. There's no limits. Yes, yes, of course. And we can be commanding to mutate in a positive way too, because we're all mutating as well. And I think that during this lineage cleanup, that certainly can happen. When you bring in more light, it doesn't matter what virus you have. That virus is just like any other living thing going to respond to more light. So, with all of us doing all this energy work on ourselves, imagine what kinds of things we're doing and having an effect on the world, especially at a level that is so a microscopic level, a quantum level. That's quite amazing. So I think that, yes, absolutely, all of this can be happening. And especially the way that we bring in light and we're able to then create great change at levels that you don't get to end up looking at until you leave the body, such as, hey, did me working on ascension for so long mutate the virus that I had to be something good? Well, I don't have an answer. I think that that's totally something that can happen, and we'll find out when we leave the body. That's the fun part. All right, so let's get down to work before we go. And we're going to do a lineage clearing together. So I'm going to simply come up with several items that I believe many of us probably have in our lineage that we can shift out, so such as addiction. And we're going to look at that as our list. It's not a complete list for you. Go and look at writing your own list, right? So if we have, again, certain things that have shown up in your family timeline that you know about, and being able to really check on that, being able to come up with a very clear list that works, that has to do with your family currently, even if you're adopted, and inviting many lineages into your field for healing. And then we also want to have then simultaneously things that we're going to be bringing in to actually help us out here. So, for example, today we're going to look at any genetic mutations that have been caused by abuse or trauma. We're going to look at anything that has to do with addiction or oppression. Remember, genetic bondage is a thing, and so that can actually help us a lot. And when we focus in on that and ask it to shift, then we're going to replace it with something else. Okay, so go in and we're going to ask our heart first. Let's take a big deep breath together. And now let's ask our heart, dear heart, please blow up my whole field as large as it needs to be to contain all the lineages that I'm related to or that have been in my life that would like to be healed now. And take a big deep breath. Good. And now we will invite our lineages. Dear lineages, all lineages that I am related to that need healing, please stand behind me in 2 spirals or more as needed. I welcome you to come and receive healing. And you may feel them behind you, many thousands of people. Good. And now we will do our clearing. So we will ask, dear heart, please lift all dark or dense energy, all inherited trauma and abuse, all addiction, all genetic mutations due to trauma and abuse, all negative programs, all cultural, negatively learned programs and beliefs, all limitations on light, all the grief, all the anger, and all the physical pain, up, down, or out of my whole body and field, and the bodies and fields of all my ancestors. Now, and take a deep breath. And now we're going to replace that. So we'll say, dear heart, please fill my body and field and the bodies and fields of all my ancestors with the qualities of light, of happiness, peace, contentment, completion, health, healing, joy, humor, strength, and fortitude. Now, and take another breath. And now let's ask for light to fill our minds, our hearts, and our guts, to bring balance in our embodiment, and for this light to continually move through our lineages to heal it, and for any ancestors that need specific help to feel free to come through and ask. That was really beautiful. And because I can see all of you together, I want you to know how wonderful it was to watch such huge amounts of energy lift off the planet and then be replaced with all that light. I just feel like we just switched timelines, maybe. Good. Okay. Wow, that felt really good. I hope that felt good for you. How did it feel? Type in and let me know. I'd like to hear. Yes, very good. And I also, oh, that's a good word, effervescent. Yeah, I also felt very euphoric as well from that. Really good. Oh, yes. I'm very glad. Sorry, I'm reading all these comments here. Yeah. So I hope that you'll take part in this throughout time, and that you use this as one of your one of your skill sets, right? One of your things that you do regularly, and that you're able to actually use it in a way that's going to serve you every day. So I think that that'll be very helpful to all of us. Wonderful feedback. Someone said, I felt circles and circles going through me through into infinity. Me too. Yeah, and that original demand for help. Absolutely. So we can just use this every day. I've been using it, and I'm going to continue to. I hope that'll serve you. Yes, and I also felt energies lifting away from the body, and but I was also keeping an eye on you guys. Wanted to make sure everything was shifting out, and it certainly was. Oh, yes. And yes, oh, Valerie, I'm so sorry to hear that you lost your spouse. And yes, there is a recording. Include him in your healing work, and he certainly will serve you as well from the other side. So we give you a big hug, Valerie. Good. All right, my friends. Namaste. We have reached our 2 hours. For those of you who've just joined us, make sure and go look at that recording that will be available. And I hope that you'll join me live next time. We'll meet next month. We will meet next month at, let's see. We've got our next call on the 19th, it looks like, which is a Friday, and we're going to do it a little later that day so that some of our Australian friends can join us. And so that'll be on Friday, the 19th of April at 5 p.m. Eastern time next time. And so I'm not sure which website you were meaning, Donna. Can you clarify? And I'll happily give you. Oh, yes. So go to seerandscientist.com, which is my website. Then go down to the circle, and you can click on the little button that says join now, and you'll see how to join our online circle where we are on there chit-chatting all day long, supporting each other. Some of us get up in the morning and just do a check-in. We meditate together every day, and every Saturday night we're doing a healing circle. So I hope that you'll join us there. We've really been having some very deep conversations, as you can imagine. And I just bless you and love you so much. Thank you for all of you coming today. It's been wonderful. I do like this platform. I like that you can see me now, that I'm not just a disembodied voice. So that's kind of great. And I've really enjoyed seeing you too. All right, my friends. Namaste. And I love you. We'll talk soon.